right, sorry for the wait, guys. Here I am back. This is Metaphysically Speaking with Mystic Madison, and we are back today. I have my special guest, Richard Simon Kahn. Richard was here, was it exactly 2 weeks ago that you were here? He was here 2 weeks ago. I asked him to come back because I wanted to, I wanted us to take a look. We're about 72 hours, guys, before the presidential elections. And I asked Richard to come back because he's such an amazing astrologer. And if you saw our show 2 weeks ago, you got to see a little bit about what he does and a little bit about how astrology works, because we talked about how the world astrology works. But now I said, what do you think if we actually compared the charts of the candidate? Would you be able to come up with a solid, I mean, there's always room for error, but do you feel confident that you can come up with a solid prediction about who will win the election based on what's going on in their charts on November 8th, Election Day? That's what you're here to see. This is epic. This is epic, guys. So let me just introduce the show. Sorry we got off to a slow start. This is Metaphysically Speaking with Mystic Madison, my guest, Richard Simon Kahn. And again, I'll just put it out there a few times that if you would like to follow the show and if you want to show your support of the show, please send us a heart. You can just hit the heart. It's sort of like the like button on Facebook. And I know I've got a couple of people watching. We've got somebody in North Carolina who's very politically active. His name's Mike, and he's watching the show. And we're going to have someone in Germany watching the show. I know that the world is all watching to see how this election is going to turn out. So this is very pivotal. Okay.
Well, thank you, Madison. And I do feel confident about sharing with you all some predictions about the election, because.
But you can't do that yet. They have to stay till the end. You cannot give it away. Don't give it away.
I won't give it away.
Okay, you have to stay till the end.
But I do feel confident because I've been doing my homework this week, and this isn't actually my specialty. Is doing this type of astrological predictive astrology. So I consulted a few people who are really experts at this, and it's interesting to see what they've come up with.
So you guys all collaborated. So it was like a collaborative thing where you all got your body of information together, and you made a very good guesstimate based on the planets, right?
Well, there's a couple. There's two people that I'm drawing on in particular. One is an astrologer who I know, an astrologer from San Diego. Her name is Edith Hathaway, and she is a brilliant astrologer. She is just a monster for doing research. That she has done research in all kinds of different areas, and her specialty is she has studied civilization and the unfoldment of civilizations and governments, and this is something she specializes in. She's written books about the influence of astrology on the destiny of countries and nations and things like that. And
wow.
She loves this. In fact, you would love her. She's a Sagittarian.
Wow. So she's got a pretty. I mean, Sagittarians are optimistic. So I would think her viewpoint would be pretty optimistic then.
Well, she's. It's not even a question of optimism, because she is very scientific. She looks for the facts. She looks for what does the data show? What do the astrological influences indicate? What do the historical influences indicate? How do they tie together? And she's very good at being able to correlate all of this type of information. And so she's written, let's see, I was just reviewing her on her website. She's written over 140 pages about this election cycle that's been going on in this country starting a year ago. She was writing about it, and she was already calling out of the field of candidates. She was calling that Trump and Clinton would be
the final two.
They would be the two final candidates,
right.
Most likely. That was especially out of the whole Republican field. There were like you know, in the beginning, if
There
you
were
remember,
a lot.
there were
a
like
lot of
20 people who were
right.
saying, yes, I'm going to be the
Right.
the Republican representative for.
But this is also your own research too. I mean, you
A
you
little
kind
bit,
of
yes.
got
I've looked
together
at
your
this.
own stuff, and
I've studied the United
he
States.
just doesn't want to commit. He doesn't want to commit to being the one to. I know what it is. So he's like brushing it off on her because he doesn't want to be the one to look. Hey, there's certain people that are going to be disappointed either way, right? I mean, this is a very pivotal election, and it's a hard thing to do to call it out and say, hey, this is astrologically what we see, and most likely what's going to happen, and that's a lot of responsibility on a live streaming broadcast.
It is, but
So,
that's exactly why I did my homework on this, because it isn't my specialty, but I'm aware of the factors that are at play, and so the people who I've consulted and the information I'm bringing to you today, I feel very confident in, and I have no reservations about standing behind their information, because I think that it's very useful, and I think that it's very strongly indicative of who's going to win the election. And so backing up before we get to the exciting prediction part.
Wait, we can't. We have 40 minutes till the prediction part. You're gonna give us all your information, and that in itself may be enough for us to guess. But I mean, it'd be great if you created a cliffhanger, and then we were all like, "What is it?"
Well, I think there are other things going on. This has been, as many people have observed, this has been a presidential election campaign cycle that nobody can remember anything even remotely similar to the type of the nature of the dialogue that has been taking place, if you even want to call it dialogue, because it disintegrates way below the level of dialogue a lot of times. But this has been something that we haven't seen in maybe 50 or 60 or 70 years in this country, where the level of engagement and the emotional buttons that are being pushed in people and in the candidates themselves, and the behavior and the statements and the way in which these campaigns are being conducted, they're part of a bigger picture, and that bigger picture, I think, has to do with the planet Pluto, as we talked about last time. That the planet Pluto is in Capricorn, and it's coming home, so to speak, in the United States chart. It's returning to its original position in the United States chart, and this has never happened in the history of the United States.
And just remind everybody how much time has passed for this orbit to occur. When's the last time it was there,
it has not done this since 1776.
Okay, so yeah. I don't know how many of you are familiar with our last show, which was dissecting Pluto and Capricorn. There's different viewpoints of Pluto and Capricorn. Some people feel that Pluto and Capricorn is just the tip of the iceberg, but other people feel like it's more important. Maybe we can talk for a minute about Pluto and Capricorn and where we were. But
okay, that's good, because this is a big lesson. Pluto is bringing some big lessons for us as a country, and for us as the people of the country too, that this is all involved together. And Pluto is returning to the U.S. House of Wealth, of Resources, and of Values.
And which house in the
chart? Second house.
This
is the second house. For those of you who are familiar with astrology, we're talking about the second house. That's where Pluto is located in the United States birth chart. And so Pluto returning is coming back, and it's kind of like, okay, it's been on this 240-year journey, and now it's coming back, and it's returning home and saying, okay, folks, so what's been going on here? How have you been using your power? Have you been using your power in ethical ways? Pluto's in Capricorn. Capricorn is concerned with integrity. Capricorn specifically is about government, organization, things like that. how things
Right.
are managed. And so Pluto is asking the U.S. government, and it's asking the people, us as the people collectively, okay, how are you using your power? How are you achieving your financial
Your
success?
wealth.
How
Your
are you,
wealth.
yes, how do you gain your
Yes.
wealth? Do you gain it by legitimate means, or do you gain it by covert means? Are you using underhanded means? Pluto is the ruler of the underworld, and this has a definite a definite connection with the psyche of the United States. That there's an underworld.
There's an undercurrent, and there, yeah, and well, if you take a look at, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I'm just guessing on some of this because I'm not technically an astrologer, but if you take a look at the psyche of corporations,
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff that maybe is uncovered now that may not have been uncovered 20 years ago. So I think Pluto kind of goes down underneath the surface,
Exactly.
and it kind of, it's almost like, what do they call those things, like when you go underground and you dig up the oil? I don't know, there's like
A drill.
well, yeah, it's like it's drilling up some of the muck.
Yes. Yes.
And Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, and when I think of Saturn, I think of a father figure. I think of, sort of like the disciplinarian
Or the authority.
Yeah,
Authority,
exactly.
yes.
So you've got those two things together, and if it's in the second house of the birth of our nation's chart, then you're going to be looking at all the things that have to do with how people handle their wealth and their money, and yeah, it's kind of like an interesting storm.
It is, and thank you for bringing this up for all the viewers. That yes, Pluto brings stuff up from the surface. It brings up that which has been hidden, that which has been suppressed, and so we're seeing if you follow the news, for the last 5 to 10 years, especially, we're seeing an unprecedented release of materials that are showing what is going on behind closed doors and under the table. And it's
Right.
a lot of it is, you think, really. It's almost, you can't believe it, but this is part of Pluto's actions. It's bringing up all of this stuff so that we as a people, and those in government who are responsible for managing the government, can be aware and can make choices, better choices or different choices about how things are managed. And so this is the big energy. And so these candidates, what's really fascinating is these candidates, and even going back to when Bernie Sanders was a candidate, that Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump all have distinct camps of followers who are very devoted to them, or very much aligned with their belief systems and with the values that they extol. And these three candidates in particular represent three very strong archetypes of the American people. And so they're out there kind of as a flashpoint for us to look at and to recognize. And I think this is part of why this campaign has had so much vitriol, and it's polarized people so much, and why there's so much emotion that's caught up in this, because people they're recognizing their own archetype in the candidates that they're following.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I also want to mention to the viewers that Richard does people's charts. Like he'll be explaining 2 of the charts right now that he's done, so you can see how he works. But also, if you'd like to call in, we are accepting calls. I think you can call in with a question. We definitely want to stay on target though with analyzing these 2 candidates. It'd be fun for you guys to draw a conclusion too. You could call in, you could vote. We could hear your vote. Like if based on the information Richard gives us, is it really going to be Trump or is it really going to be Hillary? And then you could see if you're right. And a portion of that goes to charity, which is the Smile Train, which is a great charity. So I was going to say something funny, but I'm not going to. Anyway, so please remember to send us a heart. Please feel welcome, and we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, I'm really interested. I cannot wait to hear about these two people and how their charts look on November 8th, because I think that's how you did it, right? So
Okay,
we'll
well,
be able to see that.
this is the approach. This is the approach that the one of the astrologers that I'm drawing my information from is a woman named Catherine Silverton, and she's a professional astrologer who's been practicing for many years, and she has one of the things that is unique about her is that she has a 100% accuracy record for predicting the outcome of presidential elections in this country since 1992.
Okay.
So she's got a pretty good record. and the way that she evaluates this is she looks at the birth charts of the candidates, and on election day, number one, she looks at the election day charts and sees where are the planets showing up in the birth chart of each of the candidates on election day.
Right.
That's the first thing she looks at. Then the second thing she looks at is where are the planets on the inauguration day, because that is also an important consideration. And this, putting these two together, she has been able to be very accurate, obviously, to have that kind of a record. So so just who would you like to start
Yeah,
with?
I was just going to ask you, who do you want to start with? Well, I don't know. Should we toss a coin? I feel like we should toss a coin. I'm going to get it.
Okay.
Yes, I really want to be
Okay,
fair.
sure.
I don't want to say who I'd be interested in or who, I wouldn't be interested in. I don't want anybody to get any ideas. So I'm going to go get a coin. So I'll be right back. Remember, send us a heart, call in. I'll be right back.
Meanwhile, for those of you who are out there, I'm Richard Simon Kahn of Golden Sun Astrology, and if you're in the Los Angeles area, I usually work out of the Crystal Matrix on Friday and Saturday afternoons, and otherwise you can reach me through goldensunastrology.com. And so if I can be of service to you, I would love to hear from you.
Okay, so what are we
Here
going to
we
do?
go.
Whose heads and whose tails? You call it.
Okay, why don't we say
Donald is tails.
Yeah,
'cause he's an
heads
ass.
will be Hillary
Okay.
Clinton,
All right.
tails will be Donald Trump.
Okay, and there's nothing to read into with that. So
No.
let's see.
And it's coming out tails.
Okay,
So we'll start with Donald Trump.
all right. We're starting with
So-
Donald.
Here is some information about Donald Trump's chart. First, we'll look at what's happening on election day for Donald Trump. And he's got some favorable aspects, and he has some not so favorable aspects in his chart. The favorable aspects start with Mercury. Mercury is in Scorpio, and it's making conjunction with his natal Saturn and Venus, and this is very good. This is showing that he has support. The people hear him.
Uh-huh.
He's able to communicate, and the people who represent his audience, his supporters, respond very favorably to him. He has a strong connection.
Mhm.
Venus is involved. There's a lot of feeling. Saturn is involved. This is an interesting pair. There's kind of this his sense of appealing to law and order.
I just have a question. I probably shouldn't interrupt you too much, but
Okay,
does
sure.
Saturn have to do? Could that mean more of a dictatorial kind of presence, or no?
No,
Because
well,
Saturn can kind of
yes,
rule with an iron fist.
if he won, but this is reflecting
That day.
probably a little bit more. It's reflecting that day because Mercury moves very quickly, so Mercury's just making a kind of
just
stopping
passing
in.
through.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just stopping through, and it's saying, okay, on this particular day, the election day, Mercury is going to make this favorable aspect to his Saturn in Cancer, and so that's going to give him a certain amount of eloquence. He'll be talking as usual. He'll have a lot to say, and it indicates that he'll be well received by his audience.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And then his audience is reflected both their passion for their belief in what he's saying is reflected by Venus, and the principles that he stands for are represented by Saturn.
Okay.
And so this is a favorable thing for him, and also possibly that he's going to have some support from the press as well,
Uh-huh.
which he's done all along. This has been one of his trademarks, is that he has really worked the media, whereas Hillary really came in kind of late on engaging with the press. And so Donald, of course, has been eager to get in front of that. He has a Leo rising.
And
so
what is his sign? What is Donald Trump?
Donald Trump is a Gemini.
He's a Gemini
He's
with
a
a
Gemini
Leo rising. And
with-
what's his moon?
With a Leo rising and his moon.
So
I
so
put that
Leo
chart right
Leo
now.
rising. Leos are like the kings of the jungle, and if somebody wherever their rising sign is, that's how they're seen by the public. So inside, he's a Gemini, which means that he's more they say mercurial, or he can change. He can be kind of I don't want to say not stable, but he can be kind of like back and forth. But with a Leo rising, he will be read as a leader. Because when you think of Leos, Madonna's a Leo. It's a very strong sign to be a strong person. I see something, and I'm trying to figure that out. Is there somebody trying to call us?
Oh, yeah,
I don't know.
it
I think
is.
somebody's trying to call us,
Yep.
and we're trying to figure it out. Let's see. Oh
I
yeah,
think that's it.
there he is. Now how do I do it? Do I click on him? I don't know what I do.
You get here.
Hey, we need technical support. Technical support. Let's see.
Hold on there. We see it.
We have a caller. We have someone, but we don't.
He's rotating.
Where'd it go?
He's right there in the corner.
Oh, yeah. Here you go.
Yeah.
Let me turn the volume up here.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Wait, our first caller. That's Mike.
It is. It took me a little while to figure it out, but it worked.
Maybe you could tell the rest of us. Oh, is he there?
Oh.
Did we lose him?
I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Are you guys there?
Well, we probably should keep going about.
Maybe he'll call back.
Yeah, hopefully he'll
Yeah,
call
call
back.
back, Mike.
Yeah,
Call back.
we're missing you. Okay.
Okay, so we were talking about Leo rising, Donald Trump being a Gemini with Leo rising. And one of the things about Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Geminis are often very good communicators, but they can also, depending on their ethical tone, they are very good with words. They make very good salespersons. But also they'll tell anybody whatever they have to tell them in order to get their
So they can be
way.
a little changeable. That's
well,
what
changeable
Mercurial.
and deceptive.
Oh wait, he's back. He's back.
Hey, I'm back, guys.
All right.
I'm back.
We might not have much time. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Actually, I figured I had to add more time, so I did about 3 minutes.
Okay.
So I've got time. Yeah, so we're good. I was trying to follow through and while I was getting ready, so I missed a lot of what you guys were talking about. So did you start with Trump?
Yes.
We're just
Yes,
doing
starting with
Trump right
Trump.
now.
We tossed.
Okay. You tossed a coin. I saw that. Yeah, that was good. So what's can you do a short summary of what the Trump thing was, and if I lose coins, we'll just do it again?
We're at the very beginning, just for
Oh.
for Tuesday, and he's just going into his chart. We actually well, go ahead. You can finish it up.
Okay, well, we were just saying that Trump is he's a Gemini. He has Leo rising, and so and he's getting some support here.
He's getting good feedback from the audience.
We're looking at election day, and on election day, he's got Mercury is making a very favorable aspect to his natal Saturn and Venus in his chart, and so this represents that his audience is very responsive to him, that they're identifying with him, and he's saying the kinds of things that they're interested in and they're expecting him to say, and so his supporters will be feeling very connected with him.
So I think we lost Mike, but I think but you didn't miss much, Mike. I mean, that's basically what it was, and we're just kind of giving like a very quick kind of rundown on what it's going to be like for Trump on that day. And I don't know if you that sounds really good. I don't know if you have more to add. And then we'll do Hillary on that day, and then we're going to go into what their charts look like during the inauguration, and we're going to hopefully make a prediction.
Oh, we are. Not
Okay,
hopefully. We
okay,
are going to make a
okay.
prediction. Yes. So let's see. Some other things that are happening in Trump's chart is Venus. Venus is transiting Venus. Is the moving planet is where it currently will be, or on the day of the election, will be at 26 degrees Sagittarius, and it will just have moved past his natal moon. His moon is in Sagittarius. You were asking.
Okay.
His moon is in Sagittarius, so he's got a lot of fire. He's got Leo rising, which gives him a lot of personality. His personality has a lot of fire.
His personality is big. Leo rising, big personality.
And natural gravitation towards leadership positions and leadership roles, whether he's qualified or not. He likes that kind of a role.
Yeah.
You know, that's
because Leos, which are like technically the kings of the jungle, when you think of Leo the lion, they like to have the spotlight on them. They do very well with that.
That they do. They love to be in the center of things.
Yeah.
Obama is a Leo, and you can see he's very natural, being right in the center of things. Right on. So anyway, Venus is making this, giving him some favorable energy here. Again, Venus moves very quickly, so this is just on election day, and actually a couple of days before, that it suggests Venus represents the heart quality, it represents affection, and it indicates that he's going to have a lot of support. His people, the people who are identified with Trump, are going to really be feeling strongly about his value as a candidate, and their admiration for him, their love for him, even. If you want to put it that far.
So those of you, because we have to be very neutral on the show, that are honoring Trump, or those of us that are voting for Trump, I'm just making a blanket statement. He's going to feel your support, and he's going to, it sounds like he's going to have a great day.
Yeah, well,
So-
he does have some good
Okay.
aspects happening here. He's also has Saturn is conjuncting his natal Jupiter. This is a very strong thing. That Saturn represents the authority. It represents the structure and the kind of the planetary energy. Saturn is much slower moving, so this is a more important type of an aspect. And conjuncting his Jupiter represents expansion. It represents where he has growth going.
Okay.
So this is going to be helpful to him as well.
It
doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win, but it shows that there's strength behind his position. That he's not there as kind of a dubious candidate, although some people may think so. But the fact is, from his standpoint and from the standpoint of his supporters and his possibility of winning this election, he's not in a dubious position. He's got a lot of strength behind him.
Okay.
And so this isn't an open and shut case by any means.
Is there any negatives with Trump on that day?
There are some negatives.
We're always trying
to
show both sides.
So one of the most difficult things challenging his chart on the election day is that Mars, which is the planet of will and is the warrior. Mars is the warrior planet, and Trump has part of his campaign style has been very aggressive,
Very warlike.
very warlike.
Very warlike.
And,
Yeah.
and oddly enough, on election day, the planet Mars, which also moves fairly quickly, is making no aspects to his planets in his chart, in his natal chart.
So he will not have a bad. It doesn't sound like it's going to be. There's nothing that would come up that would kind of sabotage him.
Well, but the thing is, this suggests that his strength as using this aggressive image that he's put forth and the aggressive way that he does things, Mars not making any aspects on election day indicates that he doesn't have the strength. It's kind of like, he left home, but he forgot his sword and his shield.
So he may not. So I guess to interpret that, it would mean that he may not be able to fight back. If he may not have. So his followers will be supportive of him, but he may not have a lot of be very strong that day. Is that what you're saying?
They may not see or feel the Donald that they've been following all these months, that he may not present himself in that way effectively, that there's something lacking that's convincing at that point. And in addition, there's an opposition to Venus that's happening in his chart, and this suggests that the female voters especially are not going to be favorable towards him.
So when we talked about Venus, we talked about people that like how the crowd feels about him. Venus represents love, so there's support and love. But with that opposition, it would mean that some of that crowd would be kind of taken away or divided, because opposition would stand for lack of support.
Yes.
So so there may be some division among his crowds.
And challenge that Mars and Venus are opposite each other, and so this in light of all of this stuff that's come out in terms of Donald Trump and the question of, is he just a good old locker room boy, or is he a hardcore misogynist? Those issues are being polarized on the day of the election in people's minds, and that it's probably going to have a very negative effect on a lot of the female voters.
Interesting.
That's what Mars and Venus in opposition represent there. So that's not a strong thing for him.
Okay.
Jupiter also doesn't have any real strong aspects for him on that day, and Jupiter is
luck.
Jupiter is luck. It's
how lucky
good.
you are.
It's the
Or
benefits
you're
coming
lucky.
to you. It's the blessings. It's power. It's the doors opening and opportunities coming through. Jupiter isn't making any strong aspects.
Oh, that could be a clue.
And then finally,
that could be a clue.
yeah. And then finally, Saturn is opposing his natal Uranus and is in a wide opposition to his Sun. And Saturn again brings authority. It brings position, and shows a certain level of integrity. And being opposite his Sun, it's kind of challenging his position.
So maybe the consciousness is that maybe some people will hold him accountable when they make their ballot decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Because that almost sounds like a judge and jury thing when you have Saturn.
That's a good way to put it.
So it seems like astrologically he's being hit with a consciousness that is very much judge and jury.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And people have very strong feelings about their own principles, and Saturn opposite his Sun polarizes their feelings and their view of him. It polarizes their view of him. So those who support him are going to be gung-ho, but those who don't are really totally not gung-ho. And so, again, there's this strong polarization. And then the last thing that Catherine Silverton, the astrologer who I'm consulting on this, brought up is that she did a progress chart, and his progressed moon is within 1 degree of his natal Saturn. And this is happening in right after the election and moving into December, and so this is not considered. The moon represents the favorable response of the people. The moon represents kind of the people in general when we're looking at this type of an astrological chart, and so the moon being the progressed moon conjuncting his natal Saturn is showing restriction. It's showing limitations coming in, and it's not a very favorable
Saturn's
thing.
always a hard sign. I mean, it teaches us discipline. It gets us to mature. It gets us to move to the next level. But I imagine that after the election, he suddenly has like Saturn right on top of how he feels emotionally, which is the moon. That sounds to me like he may suffer a letdown after the election.
Very possible.
And he may have to deal with those emotions, and Saturn teaches us a lesson. So maybe he'll have to deal with some deep emotions that he might not have been wanting to face. Because our Saturn return when we're like 29, 30, 31 years old is about looking at things we didn't want to face in ourselves and growing up, and it sounds like he's having a personal Saturn return transit. Am I right?
Well, that's
similar.
pretty good. He is very resilient, so probably even if he does not win this election, he still has used the opportunities to promote himself as a brand, which seems to be, that's one of his fortes.
That's very good
And
for
so-
a Leo.
And so,
Yes.
right, so he's used this in an effective way, and I think he'll bounce back.
Oh wait, you're not telling anybody. You're just giving information. So we
Right.
still don't know yet. But if in fact it sounds like the way you presented it, the negatives outweigh the positives. The positives sounded really good for support, for people cheering him on, for his fans really being there for him. The negatives sound like there could be some consequences from past actions on that day, which lead us to believe that maybe things won't be pushed under the rug and more stuff will hold him back. So, but we're not making our prediction yet, right?
No, we're not going to make it yet.
Yeah.
But we the clock is ticking. So I'm going to
Okay.
streamline Hillary now. We're going to talk about Hillary Clinton on election day, and
Hashtag Hillary. So we'll see what's going on with her.
and so Hillary, very interesting. Starting with Mercury again. Mercury is the planet of communication and dialogue and communicating to the public in particular. She has Mercury on her ascendant. She has Mercury on her rising sign there. And
What is her rising sign?
and yes, good question. 'Cause I
And
don't
do you know
have that
what her
chart right here.
sun sign is?
She has Scorpio rising.
Oh, she's a Scorpio
Yeah.
rising. Okay.
So Mercury is sitting on her ascendant, and this shows that she will be very effective in communicating to her supporters and to communicating to the public. She may also be the talk of the town.
Because remember, they've already done their debates.
Mhm.
So their time to pitch to the public is actually done. So we're not going to hear either of these candidates on election day, right?
Probably not too much.
Right. So it seems like this is information from previous talks that would be hitting her chart.
Although this has been such a crazy
Election, you just
yeah,
don't know.
the campaigning has been so crazy, and especially since Donald Trump seems to just gravitate. He magnetizes the media, so there may be a lot more happening in the media.
Maybe there'll be a story behind the story.
Yeah, that they both have strong Mercuries for them on that day. So yeah, we may be hearing from them more than we usually do.
Wow.
Um,
Wonder if they want to be on Bit Chat with me. You guys can come.
So let's see. Now another thing is that Hillary has had, interestingly enough, they called this for November 2nd that there was going to be a square to Mercury was making a square to Hillary Clinton's Saturn, and this is a very conflicting type of a aspect, astrologically speaking, and it shows that information is coming up that's creating conflict and it's creating tension in her campaign. And that's exactly what happened,
Mhm.
November 2nd. And that's when this square took place. And so there's a lot that's going on. But coming into the election, Mercury is making very favorable aspects for her, and that will help soften some of this tension there. The next thing is that she has Mars making a sextile to her natal Jupiter. So Jupiter represents, among other things, her ambition and her vision of moving forward, and Mars, as the transiting planet, is bringing in this energy of drive and will and her fighting spirit, and so she's definitely going for it. She's coming out strong, and people recognize that in her. Jupiter, transiting Jupiter, is also just 1 degree away from conjuncting her natal Neptune, and so this gives her a
No, I think we're back. Maybe there was another call. So what was the personal appeal?
And so
for...
Jupiter is conjuncting her natal Neptune, and it's in her 4th house, so it's at the root of her chart. And this is a very strong aspect. This is a very strong aspect because it shows that her foundation is being established and is getting support. Jupiter is a slower moving planet, so it's going to be there for
Didn't
some
you
time.
say when you were talking about Donald, Trump, wasn't there a lot less Jupiter? There wasn't there was some sort of
Jupiter
of a dip
Yeah.
with his luck, but you're seeing in her chart there's some sort of
she's getting
resurgence.
supported by Jupiter.
Oh,
Yeah, she's got
Jupiter is a
Jupiter
lucky.
support.
See, Jupiter is a lucky break, isn't it? Like usually.
Usually brings expansion, and it brings good luck. Sometimes that luck doesn't always look the way we expect it will.
Maybe she'll be lucky
Yeah.
if she doesn't get to be. I don't know.
Well, but she wants this. So,
yeah, so
and
then
this-
it would be a good
and this
thing,
is coming
right?
in as something that is really at the foundation of her whole career, really,
Mhm.
her whole vocation. It's connecting. To
So
her
it
fourth
would.
and
So
fifth
Jupiter
house,
would
so-
be bringing a wish
Yes,
then.
yeah,
Okay,
it's
got
bringing
it.
fulfillment. She's also got Saturn is in her third house of communication, and it's making a conjunction with her natal Mars and Pluto. This is part of where her strength comes from. This is where her willingness to engage in politics and to play the games and to be tough
And to not give up.
and not give up.
Yeah.
And Saturn coming in there is giving her a certain amount of authority with this, and it may be limiting her. She feels some constrictions, but she's also got a lot of strength going for her there, and so that's really good for her. She also has Uranus. The planet Uranus, transiting Uranus, is making a trine to her natal Saturn. So Uranus represents the kind of the unexpected.
That's breakthroughs.
It's breakthroughs, and making a trine to her natal Saturn. Again, Saturn, it gives her a certain amount of authority, and so this is showing, it's reflecting not only the unusual nature of her position in this election, because she is the first woman who's gone this far. There have been like one or two other women, I think, who have been presidential candidates, but I don't know if they've gone as far as getting down to being the
Yeah,
running
no,
candidate
that's
in
never
the polls.
happened.
I think there might have been one in the 50s or
Yeah,
something.
maybe before,
but-
but I don't
but-
think so.
Anyway, Uranus here is really giving her a very favorable aspect that's emphasizing the uniqueness of her
Of the situation.
And
And also, from what I understand, even though Saturn can be a very hard planet, I mean, it can discipline us, it can force us to grow up, force us to take responsibility. It also gives us what we deserve. So if somebody works very, very hard, I mean, Saturn can be, it's all toil and hard work, but if you really kind of abide by the lessons and play by the rules of Saturn, you get the gift, which sometimes is maturity, which sometimes is wisdom, so that's an interesting, because when you were talking before about Trump, you were saying how it sounded like Saturn was causing him a certain amount of grief because it was affecting his moon. And maybe that is also on some level, I mean, I'm not saying who I'm voting for, but maybe that is also some payback for him for something, perhaps. And for her, it sounds like her Saturn is being elevated and she's getting some sort of, she's kind of getting a rite of passage.
she definitely
a little
is.
bit.
She definitely is. There is more in her chart. There is more leaning in her favor, but they're both, just
They're
based
neck and neck.
on the election day charts. They're very close. There's possibilities for each of them in the election day charts.
Which is what we're seeing.
But now
Yeah.
I'd like to jump ahead and look not only at the election day charts, but also then look at the inauguration day charts.
Okay.
Because that really seals the deal, so to speak. And so looking at Donald Trump's chart on the inauguration day, there are no planets, transiting planets that are elevating his natal chart. That's the conclusion, is that there's nothing indicating an elevation of his status in the inauguration day chart. Whereas for Hillary, there are some key things, and one of them is that the transiting north node of the moon is actually crossing the midheaven of her chart, her 10th house of career, and this is about as significant as you can ask for to indicate an elevation of status. The 10th house represents a person's status, their prestige. It represents their career. It represents their ambitions. And the north node of the moon shows the direction of where our growth is coming and what we're being called to. And so this is a very, very strong indicator for her in her chart. And then Jupiter will be making a sextile to her natal Saturn. And so her inauguration day chart definitely is elevating her position. And so based on this, the
All right.
conclusion,
Does anybody want
here's
to
the
call in?
prediction.
Does anybody want to call in with their information? If not, go ahead. So
Okay.
Based on astrology, what did you come up
Based on the
with?
astrology of the election day and the inauguration day, it's very strongly indicated that Hillary Clinton will be the next president of the United States. It's going to be close during the election. There's other things happening in terms of the planetary energies at the time of the election and following the election. This could be a very controversial election. There's probably going to be things dragged out about the votes and questions of where, how accurate the votes were and different things like that. We're going to see all kinds of shenanigans because these are both really big power players, and they're both serious about wanting to win this
And
election.
they both have strong charts. I mean, let's face it,
They
they
do.
are both forces to be contended with. And both of their charts with Scorpio, with her, Scorpio is a very strong sign, one of the strongest signs. Leo, and people are afraid of Scorpios. Leo is a very, very strong sign. You know, we've got some strong people.
Yeah, they're both very, very strong. So this is going to be played out after the election. There's going to be some controversy swirling around it, but the inauguration date chart really shows that Hillary Clinton has the planetary support to be the next president of the United States. Donald Trump does not. And then I'd like to.
Do we have time? I know we started a little late, so
Just
okay,
if we could keep going.
stay with us for a couple more minutes,
So
maybe just 5.
To finally seal this up, there was also the other astrologer who's a friend of mine that has done so much research on political situations and has written 140 something pages about this election. She was recently at a conference, this International Society of Astrological Research. She was a speaker
Oh wow!
on a panel at this conference in Costa Mesa, and they had 2 different panels with 6 astrologers each talking about their predictions for the election. And both nights and both sets of 6 astrologers all concluded that Clinton would be the presidential winner. So
72 hours, folks.
it's looking very, in terms of the planetary stuff, it's looking very, very strong that Hillary Clinton will be the presidential winner of this campaign. But it's going to be, the sun is in Scorpio. This election is taking place. The sun is in Scorpio.
And she's a Scorpio.
She's a Scorpio.
Right.
He's got Leo rising, so there's a lot of fire. There's a lot of willingness to fight for what they believe in and what they want. Both of them have that, and so there's going to be, and Mercury is still in Scorpio, and there's a lot of power.
Wow.
There's a lot of power.
But
and
it
struggle
sounds like the
going on.
planets are more with her because there's so many elements of Scorpio floating around, and she's natally, her sign is
Yeah.
Scorpio.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like the heavens like open up, and they're like, here, like, you know, you get the shiny exterior. Anyway, I think we have to wrap it up. Richard, thank you so much for coming. This was so historical. I feel like my grandchildren are going to watch this Bid Chat episode, and it's going to be meaningful. And I really thank you so much for coming.
Okay.
And
well,
remember, you can get your chart done by Richard. He can. Again, give me a heart. Please come back. I'm here every weekend. I'm either Saturday at 3 on Pacific Standard Time, or Sundays at noon. We're giving my guests a chance to choose their best day. So it'll be one or the other. I'm going to have a psychometrist come on. We'll be talking about the energy that's held in jewelry and gems, and she's also a psychic. I will have a yoga instructor. We're going to do all sorts of fun stuff. I hope that you'll come. Will you come back again?
Of course.
We could talk
of
about
course.
more world
This is
events.
always fun. This is,
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, again, signing off, Metaphysically Speaking with Mystic Madison. Thanks. Bye. I don't know how to turn you off.